Hey guys, where are we going, Annie?
Sausalito, the most beautiful town on the water. I think this is just one of my favorite places on earth that I've lived. I had a dory at one time, and my boat anchored out in the middle of the bay, right where the county line met the city line, and the pelicans sat on pilings floating in the water, demarking the space and the way that boats should come and go. And I would row home with my dog, with all my food, with my water, with my firewood. And once there, I was just completely enamored of the wind and the water and the light. The boat twirled. It was suspended from 2 points, so it would move all day and all night, with the tide going up and down and with the wind twirling around. It was quite splendid. I loved it. So how I got to Sausalito was I was at San Francisco State, and Piero Caro, one of our elder statesmen who lived on a huge ferry at Gate 5, was teaching a class at the Experimental College, which was one of our wonderful inventions, a free college of people teaching things we all wanted to learn about. He taught us a class in survival, and he actually took us to Sausalito and showed us where all these derelict lifeboats were floating in the mud and the water, being tied up, being used, and they could be purchased for $100, and you could build a house on them. And they were such a part of the fiber of the neighborhood because Sausalito had been the Marin ship where all of the Liberty ships were built for World War II. It was actually how we won the war, I believe. And Sausalito set up, I know of 3 gates, 3, 4, 3, 5, and 6 were our gates. And those were the big places where the boats were constructed and then launched. A gate is like a way where you slide the boat down into the water. And these were huge steel vessels. And they probably, had 10 or 15 lifeboats on board because they had a huge crew. And they were out in the middle of the ocean and, doing maneuvers, this and that. Anyway, their lifeboats were extremely sturdy, and so they survived quite well. They were either steel with rivets or plywood. And there were some other boats, too. There were landing craft, buoy boats. Those were nice. So those boats still exist along the waterways of Sausalito. And so we, a community of approximately 1,000 people up and down the various gates, built our homes on boats and had our shops on land where we built boats or did whatever we did. I started my mask making business there on my houseboat after I got it, and life was good. I mean, it was testy. I remember my bed catching fire one night because we didn't have electricity in our houseboats at some point. The city decided we were unworthy of electricity, so we had candles, and my feather bed took liking to the candle and went up in flames. I did survive and slept outside the rest of the night. Let's see. So the waterfront was permeated by the remains of this boat fabrication. It had been a 24-hour-a-day schedule, 3 8-hour systems of people coming and going, bells ringing, people going home, coming to work, all hours of the day and night to get all of these boats built. So it had this wonderful sense of mission. And mostly women had been working on the boats because the men were off in World War II. And after the war, of course, all the boats came home and were scuttled or were recycled or this and that. Life shifted back to the land for many people. But we on the waterfront occupied that narrow space between high water and low water, which was in the public domain. I used to come to Sausalito when I was teaching at Pacific High School. It was a lovely high school in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We had 40 acres and a big lake. And I had moved there in '70 to teach art. And I took with me my goats, my donkey, my monkey, my several parrots, and I can't remember if there was anybody else, but it was quite a package. And so I stayed in a teepee at first, and then I moved into a dome. We built 17 domes where all the students and their teachers lived in various domes. And the dome I was assigned was a pillow dome. It was aluminum struts with nitrogen pillows, transparent pillows filled with nitrogen. And so you could see through the walls into the forest. It was simply brilliant. So when I would come into Sausalito, it was sort of my adult world, you know, leaving the 80 teenagers behind to fend for themselves for the weekend. And so, you know, we established fabulous friendships. The culture of the waterfront came up with its own theater, its own costumes. Women made clothes and sold them at the Waldo Works. And, you know, we all really engaged in the complex culture that we created right there on the waterfront. And so at one point when I was teaching, I bought a 23-foot school bus to take my students to Mexico. And it became the vehicle that I would go to Sausalito in on the weekends. And that was ultimately how I moved there. I had the school bus for 13 years. It was a deep part of my life. I did shows out of it after I became a mask maker, and you know, it was an all-purpose machine. Very lovely. I decided to move there when I came back from studying Indonesian dance, where I learned how to make masks and carve, and it was an extension of my passion for dance. I was a dancer all my life, and the Indonesian community of small villages and performance really suited my temperament. So I brought that to Sausalito after studying in Berkeley and in Seattle. And I arrived in my little school bus and took up residency. The Gate 3 boat co-op was just being cleared and started, and I pulled my bus in. I had picked up one of my goats on the way there, and I definitely needed to get her out of the bus. She was eating my candles and my books. So I quickly made a shed for her, and then took up residency alone in the bus. Well, let's see, I had some cats and dogs too. The property was owned by Don Marquez, and he had owned a nice parcel up in town and traded it for this expansive marine ship waterfront. And he was very knowledgeable about boats, and he had all the old equipment and machinery from the war days, and he taught us how to use it. I worked a tilting arbor bandsaw and riveted 40-foot boats that we created at the Gate 3 co-op. And so one day a boat came crashing into our harbor. Someone had stolen the anchor, and it found its way in. And I claimed it. I said I would like it so I could move off the bus and really be a part of the harbor community. So later on, I was, 1988 it would have been by now. I was in New York at a gift show selling my papier-mâché masks. And I got an inquiry about whether I wanted to buy a mask. And I said, oh, no, thanks, I'm an artist. And then I discovered it was a license for the Phantom of the Opera mask, fabricated for Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber. I said, no, thanks. And then I thought about it, and I decided I definitely would like that job. So I came home, and I figured out how to make leather masks, and I tried fabricating paper masks with paper pulp so it would be fast, and experimented with styrene masks, and I came up with some very good designs, which I am still making to this day. And I would ship thousands of masks to New York, to where the show was going, and then when it started moving around the country, I would ship to the lobby of any show that was doing the Phantom of the Opera. I lost that license in 9/11. Lloyd Webber was there, and he decided he was going to make a film about the Phantom, and he was changing the mask. So I was out of business, and I had moved to Berkeley in the middle of all of this to have a stable unit to work in, and now I found myself doing other things, other theater groups. I started to design things for the Revels and for Traveling Jewish Theater. And before that, I had worked with Antenna Theater, of course, in Sausalito with Chris Hardman. And my life was just a delicious mash of creativity and performance.
So that's your old boat?
Yeah, the Quarter Round, it was called, and then I named it Dragonfly's Phoenix Dances. And I had a lovely dragon on it, but I think it's been painted over.